Shabbat Shalom. Rather than just one of us, this week all four of our clergy have collaborated on this Shabbat message, each of us offering insights from Jewish tradition intended to help all of us navigate the realities of our world. A moment in time marked by great uncertainty, as each of us continues to face the ongoing pandemic and its impact on almost every aspect of our lives, as well as great division here at the tail end of a divisive election season, marked by such vitriol, dangerous anger, and intolerance for those with whom we disagree. Our collective prayer for the community this week is to bridge the many divides that separate our families, our friend groups, and the larger community, offering wisdom from our tradition to help pave a pathway forward. By lifting up the fundamentals of our faith, we hope to inspire repair and offer a place to turn rooted in Jewish values and Jewish tradition. There's nothing more fundamental to Judaism than the covenant between God and humankind, a sacred partnership from the very beginning. Consider the opening words of Genesis when God creates the first human beings. God created humanity, B'Tselem Elohim, in the divine image, entrusting us to hold sway over all the earth. Powerfully, the text is not particular to the Jewish narrative. Rather, it serves as the universal framework for all of the Abrahamic traditions. From a common beginning, our tradition reminds us that we are all of us, inextricably connected and bound by our common humanity. But that commonality remains an inert fact until we activate it with our empathy and our care. As one of my teachers puts it, when we do, we're not just being nice, not just doing the right thing. We're actually making tangible the divine echad, the oneness that is at the heart of the world. When we open our hearts to that oneness that unites us, then and only then can we bridge the great societal divisions that divide us. We're supposed to care about each other, about one another's struggles, pains, and losses, for we are a people created in the likeness of a compassionate God. We must act like it. I want to again lift up the opportunity before us now, each of us, to practice more compassion for one another, particularly others with whom we disagree. Yes, even for those who voted differently than we did. For even they are created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of our Creator, and they too possess a holy soul worthy of all that we wish for ourselves. And that is so hard to wrap our minds around, especially when we are feeling fearful, hurt, or exhausted from the weightiness of our lives. But God asks for nothing less. One thought, one action at a time, we can practice compassion and demonstrate love for the other. Together, building a better world for us all, embodying our Jewish values and living up to our sacred obligations to partner with God in the unfolding of creation.
The large sanctuary wall. That's what I've been thinking about this week. You know, those large white letters on the eastern wall, or I guess it's southeastern wall of the large sanctuary. This is what they say. Well, they're in Hebrew, but in English. They're words from the prophet Micah. God has told you, humanity, what is good and what Adonai requires of you: to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Hear that again. To do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. 3 goals, 3 aspirations, 3 challenges. What is justice in Jewish eyes? It's how we treat one another. We treat one another as if we are, because we are, all of us, in the image of God. We aim for fairness. We aim for equality. Think about even our word for charitable assistance. Tzedakah is the word for justice, for fairness. We try to make the world more fair with our giving, with our efforts. Kindness, chesed. Chesed is not earned. I'm not kind to you because you did something for me. I mean, that's nice too, don't get me wrong. But we are kind in Judaism. We give chesed because God is kind. We do it. We give kindness to everyone. And walking with God. This is actually, I take a little bit of a different take than the prophet Micah. Micah says we should walk with God. Torah talks about Noah walking with God and says that Abraham walked before God. So walking with God, at God's side, thinking about what God asks of you, walking in partnership. Walking before God is to lead. And I share with you the words of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who writes, Abraham was not a conventional leader. He did not rule a nation. There was, as yet, no nation for him to lead. But he was the role model of leadership as Judaism understands it. He took responsibility. He acted. He didn't wait for others to act. Of Noah, the Torah says, he walked with God. But to Abraham, God says, walk before me, meaning be a leader. Walk ahead. Take personal responsibility. Take moral responsibility. Take collective responsibility. This Shabbat, let us be inspired in the coming days, weeks, months, and years to walk ahead, to take personal responsibility, to take moral responsibility, to take collective responsibility, and to act as we do.
In this week's Torah portion, Vayera, we get to hear the Akadah story, once again, the story we hear on Rosh Hashanah morning. And in this story, Abraham responds 3 times with the word Hineni. The first time, God calls to him in order to test him, and Abraham answers, Hineni, I am here, I am ready to serve. The second time, Isaac asks his father, and Abraham answers, Hineni beni, I am here, I am ready to serve my son. And the third time, an angel, perhaps God, calls to Abraham. Again, Abraham answers, Hineni, I am here, I am ready to serve. The founder of Hasidism, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, once relayed the following about a conversation between 3 laborers about the passage in the Torah known as the Akadah. The first one asks, what is so special about the test of the Akadah? If God had revealed himself to me and commanded me to sacrifice my only son, would I not obey? Answering his own question, he said, if God told me to sacrifice my only son, I would delay my doing so for a while to keep him with me for a few days. Abraham's greatness lay in that he rose early in the morning to immediately fulfill the divine command. The second one said, if God told me to sacrifice my only son, I would waste not a moment to carry out his command, but I would do so with a heavy heart. Abraham's greatness lay in that he went to the Akadah with a full heart of joy over the opportunity to fulfill God's will. The third one said, I too would carry out God's will with joy. I think that Abraham's uniqueness lies in his reaction upon finding out that it was all just a test. When God commanded him, do not touch the child, do nothing to him, Abraham was overjoyed. not because his only child would not die, but because he was given the opportunity to carry out yet another command of God. Today, I see this repetition as a call to us. We might feel stuck because we don't have answers. We could easily be overwhelmed by the enormity of the work that appears before us when it comes to repairing the great divides we experience in our world. We could easily say that we are not up to the task. But Abraham is our guide. He accepts his role as a servant of God and those around him. With the blessing of life comes great responsibility. Today, the Akadah text reminds us of our mandate to act. Abraham serves as an exemplar of this imperative. He urges us to say, Hineni, to God, I am here and I am ready to serve. Likewise, this obligation extends to all humanity. Both God and humanity are calling to us. I hope to respond rightly. Like Abraham, Hineni, I am here, and I am ready to serve.
Hasidic master Reb Shlomo Berezovsky teaches, any day in which we do not perform some act of kindness, chesed, is a day in which we have not really lived. Any day that we do not perform some act of chesed, we fail to prepare a vessel into which God's chesed can flow to us. Ultimately, the truth of our lives is that much of what happens to us. We have very little control over the external of our lives, over our existence. We cannot control other people, their choices, what they say or what they do. And once we've done whatever we can in the realm of communal engagement or the body politic, we really cannot control the results of what will happen. Once we cast our vote, our agency in the process concludes. What we can control, however, as long as we have the ability to breathe, think, and communicate, is how we behave, what we think, what we say, what we do. And on some level, we all know this, but nevertheless, we confuse these realities, spending so much of our time focused on trying to control that which we cannot, and quickly abandoning our agency in the only place we actually have it, in how we respond to that which happens to us. And this is the fact that the teaching of Nitivot Shalom, Rabbi Berezovsky, is reminding us and then encouraging us to reframe in notably stark terms. Our world and the creatures in it do not exist in a black and white binary, but often, if we're honest, our choices of how to respond in any given situation do. We can choose to be cruel, or we can choose to be kind. Barring notably exceptional circumstances, these are really the two forces at play in any given situation. We can tell ourselves all sorts of stories that let ourselves off the hook. Well, that thing I wrote on my social media feed about the other side, that was just venting. Or I was only sharing that thing I said about them privately with people I trust. It's not like I shouted it from the rooftop. Or that value that I really stand by and believe in, and that I know is righteous. Well, anyone who sees it differently, if they see it that way, that means they are horrible, stupid, ignorant people. And I'm not afraid to tell them so. We shouldn't lie to ourselves about any of these choices. These are cruelties. They are not righteous, they are self-righteous. They matter and they have consequences, not just to the outside world, but more importantly in this case, they impact the nature of ourselves, our souls. They diminish our God-given capacity to be kind. And the text that I shared earlier teaches this. Choosing not to act in kindness renders our lives, our time, meaningless. Any day in which we do not perform some act of kindness or chesed is a day in which we have not really lived. But if we do choose instead to respond not with cruelty, but with kindness, to create space for the truth of the other, for their dignity, for their narratives and understandings, even if it's hard for us to hear that, the opposite of the teaching comes to be. It means we have chosen to activate real living, the potential for created shared understanding, a bridge to be built. And it's only from that place that we can forge a path into tomorrow. So will we be cruel or will we be kind? Will we allow ourselves to be vessels for bitterness and anger or kindness and holiness? Each choice, each act, small or large, demonstrates our choosing of who we are in our lives and ultimately how we will be remembered. It's a question worth asking ourselves each and every time we are in a position to choose which path to take. Any day in which we do not perform some act of chesed, kindness, is a day in which we have not really lived. Any day that we do not perform some act of chesed, we fail to prepare a vessel into which God's chesed can flow